Jim, how difficult a result is that to stomach?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not the outcome that any of us wanted. We knew what to expect from St Mirren. They've got a real identity in terms of how they play. They've been successful in getting top six the last 3 seasons, and we never for one moment felt that they would give up the fight for 5th place. They're a really well organised team, quite direct in terms of their approach, but there's a clear understanding there among the players, and they were good at it today. I thought in the opening period of the game there wasn't a great deal in it. I thought it was pretty 50-50. They had a couple of chances, we had a couple of chances. Sam Dalby's disappointed with the header that comes in. Great delivery from Glenn, and but then in these games, what we've found over the previous 4 fixtures that we won against St Mirren, that that first goal is really, really important. There's such fine margins between the teams, and unfortunately today St Mirren managed to get their noses in front, which makes life a lot more difficult. But even at that point, at 1-0, we never felt that we were out of the game. A draw wouldn't have been a disaster for us this afternoon, and that was the message at half time. But unfortunately, I just felt the longer the game went on, the more dangerous St Mirren looked. They looked to have a bit more energy than what we had in pretty much every area in the pitch. It's been a really demanding season for the players, and they've put a hell of a lot into it. And I think, without making too many excuses, we have got a number of players at the moment that are running on fumes, to be perfectly honest. We haven't been able to make too many changes, freshen things up, and a number of the players in that starting 11 today aren't quite playing at 100%, and I thought that showed.
You looked visibly frustrated at times with the lack of bravery on the ball, so what do you put that down to today?
I think something that we've done really well against St Mirren in the previous fixtures is managed to play our way out of trouble more than we did today. We spoke about the press. We know how aggressive St Mirren are as a team without the ball. And today we didn't handle that pressure well enough. I lost count of the amount of times we just kicked the ball out of the pitch. Even in the second half there must have been 4 or 5 occasions where we've got good possession and we turn it over cheaply, which leads to numerous dangerous counter-attacks. And the switch of play was on pretty much all afternoon. We just weren't able to work it through the midfield out the opposite side to then get our wing backs on the ball, and we didn't do that part of the game well enough. I can't point fingers at players and say that nobody was committed or there was no lack of effort. I think today we were beaten by the better team, and that is hard to say, but ultimately that's what happened.
We're obviously in the midst of 3 games in 7 days, so how do you go about refocusing the players in such a short space of time?
Well, I think I spoke about it after the Hibs game in terms of, we know the areas that we need to strengthen. As a club, we've sat down and discussed what the recruitment strategy looks like next year. I think we need to add more energy, more athleticism and a bit more pace to the team. And that's something that we're working hard to do. But, this group of players, off the back of just being promoted, 12 months ago, have put us in the position that we're in terms of top 6. I don't think there's a Dundee United supporter out there that, would have just assumed that top 6 was a guarantee. We had to fight hard for it. But the last 3 results, it goes without saying, are extremely hard to take.
Yeah, obviously it's still in European football, still in our hands. I'm sure the guys are desperate to go and achieve that, so that they don't look back at the end of the season and say it was a great season but we missed out on something special.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're all desperate for European football, but I mean that was not the objective at the start of the season. The start of the season, that most sensible football people out there would have looked at the squad, how tight we are in numbers, the number of players that were coming up from the Championship that hadn't experienced the Premiership before. I don't think anybody would have expected us to get top 6. Now, the fact that we're in the top 6 and competing for those European places, of course, the bar gets raised a little bit, and we all get a little bit excited about the European thing. But we're still very much in the driver's seat. We have to find a way to get a result in the next 2 games to ensure that is the case. But we'll keep fighting, we'll keep working hard. Obviously there's not a lot of time in between now and midweek to get the recovery that's required, but we'll try and put a team out on the pitch that's got the energy levels required and that can go and get us a result.